did you first grow curious about the paranormal? Dare you dig deeper? You are listening to House of Asher.
And welcome back, everybody. This is House of Asher. I'm your host, Steve Asher. This is episode 58. And man, we're just chugging along. I've been very lucky to have a lot of interesting people and people, very kind-hearted people that were willing to give up their time to sit and kind of just kick it back and forth with me and touch on some curious and unusual subjects. And our today's guest is no different. We actually have Barry Gaunt with us. I'm going to do a quick little intro, see if I don't butcher this too badly. Barry Gaunt is a shaman and seeker, as well as a researcher. He attended Kent State University. He is the state director for Kentucky MUFON. He is the managing director of Night Stalkers Paranormal Research. In addition, he co-hosts radio show Into the Fire radio show, and he manages at the Octagon Hall Museum. This gentleman is a 40-plus years paranormal researcher, and just can't say enough nice things about him. I actually was on his show not long ago, and a very, very nice fella, and I want to welcome to the show. Hey, Barry, how you doing, bud?
Hey, Steve. How's things going?
Swell. Like I said, if doing any better, there need to be two of me.
There you go, buddy. There you go. And thank you for having me on. I'm really looking forward to our conversation today, and we're just excited. So whenever you're ready, whatever you need, we're ready to go.
Oh yeah, man. Like I said, we are up and rolling, and you know the thing is, if I'm not mistaken, you're not a Kentucky native. You're actually from West Virginia, correct?
Yeah, I was actually born in West Virginia. I'm kind of like a nomad through my career. I've traveled all over the place. I've been in Ohio, lived in Florida, down in Miami and in the Keys, and then went back to Ohio, ended up in Detroit, Kalamazoo. Then I went to Chicago, Atlanta, Denver, Colorado, back to Detroit, and now into Bowling Green, Kentucky.
Yeah, man, you've been.
I've been in Bowling Green now since 1997, so 20 years.
I started saying, man, you've been definitely burning up the shoe leather. I don't know if they make shoe leather anymore, but it shows you how old I am. But yeah, I mean, and that's the thing is that you know, some people kind of key in a certain area, and you know, I'm as guilty of that as anybody. You know, because obviously being in Western Kentucky, that's kind of what I focus on. And you know, I'm sure people's like, okay, man, enough with Western Kentucky. I'm like, well, that's what I know. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've been lucky enough to travel, you know, certain parts of the globe and across the U.S. and stuff. But everyone takes away something different from any experience, and that's why I love having different folks that have done that. You know, and just like yourself, you know, 40-something years experience, you've seen a whole lot of stuff, and you know, so of course I'm going to ask you your origin story. What got you into this? Was there a moment, you know, some sort of experience that happened to you or your family or something? What happened?
Well, I've always, for some reason or other, it seems like I've, from my early years, being from West Virginia, and my grandparents and everything else from the hills of Appalachia. And they always telling folk stories and everything else, and I'd love to sit down and just listen to the old folks talk. I don't know, you know, it was one of those type things. They told stories, they told all the stuff, which really started to get me interested. And then when we moved away and we went over to Ohio, I started having experiences. My grandfather died, and then the next thing I know, I'm watching him walk through the house. He'd come and visit me. I was able to see spirit activities and everything else. And then in 1964, we were living in Massillon, Ohio, and then I had a UFO encounter there, and was abducted, and that kind of sent me off through the roof. So it's been one thing after another. One of the things that I have found about the paranormal it's all intertwined. It's very important to know that. I mean, it's fine to specialize in one area, but if you're not specializing in all, looking at it all, you're missing a big part of it, because believe it or not, it is truly all together. It's high strangeness. They all go together. And I wish more people would open themselves to really looking into all of it, because it's very important.
Well, it's very true. And the thing was, too, I was going to ask you, it seems like there's a very strong correlation between what we just call, UFO experiences or UFO visitations or whatnot, and the paranormal. A lot of the stories, abduction stories, or what, some people don't like calling them abductions, but, interactions and stuff seem very similar. A lot of times, just even the timing, the way they travel, in and out of houses and all that sort of stuff. It's, you can almost like layer it over it, and it matches it pretty well. If you had to give a number, and this is just a spitballing, of people who have said they've had paranormal experiences, how much of those would you say might actually be, UFO or alien connected?
That's a great question, because as we go out and we do a lot of residentials, we do a lot of time, and we do a pre-investigation when we go. Of course, we're always asking all these questions, and one of the questions that come up is, have you ever seen a UFO? You'll be surprised how many of them do. And then they start talking about how close of an encounter it was. And a lot of times they may be an abductee, they don't even know they're an abductee. But after this experience has happened, they start experiencing high strangeness in their home. And I would say that it could be as high as 40% of the people that are having these experiences do have them. And I guarantee you, everyone that has a UFO experience or a close UFO experience will automatically start seeing, the next few days they'll talk about, oh man, I start seeing shadow figures. I'm seeing light balls in my house, or orbs with different lights, and light streaks crossing the room and everything. And then it just takes off from there.
Yeah, that's so funny that you mentioned that. Again, being in the part of Kentucky I am, it's a small town, and it's one of those type of deals where you bump into a friend and you may talk there for 10 or 20 minutes. Just the nature of it, depending on how busy either person is. And I'd spoken to a friend of mine. I'll just call him Tom, and I was trying to collect some ghost stories for a Halloween show. Kind of like an old school Art Bell, collecting stories, having some calling and whatnot. And this guy had always been a very religious guy, and I went to school with him, and he was explaining that he had a sighting, and the same thing that you just said. Not probably a day later, he started noticing shadow figures and movements, like full on, and also out of the corner of his eye. And for a while, he really couldn't go in crowds, because it's like he could not just feel like the emotion, like an empathic, some sort of empathic imprint of these people, but almost could like hear what they're saying, or whatever their intent was. And he said he just had to pull away from people for probably about a week.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's really funny. A lot of these people who have these experiences are, if you will, enlightened. I have one that I've been working with for 5 years, just a great guy. And his case was happened in Arkansas. We got together. He was looking for an investigator. Couldn't get what he wanted, and we got involved in the case. And when I first started talking to this guy, he was having all the same experiences that your friend just talked about. But then he started, it's really odd, he kind of withdrew the trauma from these experiences, and the things that you have are just crazy. And one of the things that you start feeling is something changes inside of you. One, you start to learn that, hey, everything that I knew in the past was a lie. I've been lied to all my life, and it really changes it. You start on a new path. But some of these people that are experiencing this actually have the thing where they can feel people's negativity. They feel their energy, and it's just like, oh man, I can't be around it. It just changes everything. For me, myself, one of the worst places for me to go is Walmart. I go in there and I can just feel people's energy, and I don't know what it is, but man, when I'm getting around negative people, it really affects me in a terrible way. But as it keeps on going, this guy changed 100%. He was very how can I say it? I guess he was an educated person. He was involved in the military, did some special things, but his IQ increased incredibly. And it's like everyone that has these experiences gets some kind of a gift, and he received these gifts. And as I look at an abduction, or as I look at the people that are seeing these things, I start to actually believe that they have a piece of the puzzle. They're given something special about their life, and then they go ahead and use it. Does your friend seem that way now?
Well, it was a thing. We were fairly tight in school, and we just kind of fell away from each other. Me and my wife had moved around different spots here in the U.S. for a while when the kids were small, and you know how it is when you kind of come back home. It always seems like nothing's really changed, and some of the old connections you kind of rekindle, and some of them you don't. Just some people just move on and get into different stuff or whatever, and which I was always very mindful to kind of keep my stream as clean as I could. If anybody was dealing with personal demons, drugs or anything like that, I try to be supportive, but I definitely had to keep that away from my house. But I'm not saying that's what happened with my friend Tom, but it was just a thing of he kind of lived not really in town, but I definitely think he definitely kind of pulled back from people, and it just seemed like it was really hard on him. It seemed like some people can weather that better than some. I know that we were talking about, well, I did in your introduction, the shaman aspect. I wonder how many people who have went into seemingly religious experiences, which what is a religious experience, but and had some sort of kickstart or stimulation or maybe an upgrade. I've heard a lot of people talk about having downloads.
Exactly. And that's exactly what it's like. It's like you've been downloaded new information. It's changed a lot of everything else. There are some that have religious experiences. Some of them have a lot of trauma. And then when you get directly with the abductees, they have a very most of them do not really remember the good experiences. What they remember is bad experiences. It's supposed to be into a totally different story as far as going in towards the labs, which are what we consider to be the government is involved, and it's kind of like the good guys are trying to, for some reason, come to these people. We're under a lot of social conditioning and everything else right now, but for some reason or other, after these things happen, you don't buy the social conditioning anymore. And I think the government tries to monitor abductees. They know that they've been that way, and then they actually do their own abductions and trying to figure out why these people are trying to contact them and everything else to get that information. I know that sounds odd, but here in Kentucky and in the Bible Belt and everything else, there is so much stigmatism, I guess, or social conditioning in the past about, geez, you're crazy if you're talking about UFOs. And most of the people who have UFO experiences, I have one that's in Appalachian part of Kentucky right now, and he is so apologetic now because before he had his experience, he would just laugh at these people, and now he is like going, I can't believe I did that to them. It's such a trauma, such bad things. These things are really real.
Right. Well, and there's like that old adage. There's no atheist in a foxhole. I mean, it's a thing when you go. Sometimes it takes like you said, the raw experience to kind of go, oh my God, it just
Right.
I never realized.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. And as I was stating, we're in this so much social conditioning now, and there's so much syncretism. I mean, back in the old days, I mean, you just didn't talk about UFOs. You were a crazy person. It's starting to break a little bit more, but it's still there, especially in this stuff. And let's talk just about religious experiences and religion. A lot of people, for everything that I do, and I consider myself very religious. I was saved a few years back, um, and I do everything by the grace of God. And it is just one of these deals where people come up to me and go, well, how can you be a religious person and still do the things that you do, because it says you're not supposed to play with these things? And I'm like, no, you know what it does? It strengthens my belief, because there is good and there is evil, and it's at work every day. And I'm just one of the fortunate people that are allowed to help others and come out and work in this way. And we do cleansings, we do it all, and it's in my heart. It's what this is what God gave me to do. That's what I'm going to do.
Right. Well, I was going to say real quick, and not to break your train of thought, but it makes me think back. People who supposedly would have visions, be it God or some higher power, Joan of Arc, people like that, who were chastised and ultimately paid to have a very heavy price for their abilities. I mean, we've come a long way. I mean, but there definitely are folks, that I've spoke to. We could sit and talk about demons and this and that and evil spirits and stuff all day, but once you use the A word, start talking about aliens, or you start talking about shadow people or anything like that, they might even entertain the concept of maybe they were giants and things like that, because it talks about it in the Bible. But
Right.
anything that kind of steps out of that narrow margin, then it's like, oh yeah, I got to check out.
Yeah. Well, we all live in a veil, and some people, that veil gets lifted through their experiences a little bit. When that veil gets lifted, then you're going to be seeing quite a lot of different things. And the world is a mystery, and we're not supposed to know it all. And there's other dimensions, there's other parts of it, and when they come close together, you're going to see odd things. And I think currently, right now, we're seeing a lot more of them now. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I mean, it seems that way. And then also I have to go that there's so much more media now. And I'm sure there's a certain amount of that. I forgot what that study was. It was where somebody had bought like a red Volkswagen, and then they started noticing red Volkswagens everywhere. Like, oh, hey, there's another red Volkswagen. Sometimes I think it's what your focus is too. I think there's a lot has been going on probably forever, but it's just maybe our focus wasn't there. Maybe if you want to say vibrational levels, if you want to go there, but it does seem like there is an upsurge in it. So I'm not sure what that means.
Everything is, and you mentioned vibrations, frequencies. That's life. That's what we are all about. When you understand that, it becomes very much part of you and your being, and it helps you deal with a lot of other things, because we're nothing but we're wearing a meat suit, and the thing that's inside of us is the thing that continues forever and ever. But there's so many different aspects and everything else, and I just love the paranormal. I love helping other people out. I love helping teams. I try to do that as much as we can. We work well together. We want to support everyone, and it's one of these things. And not everybody is meant to be these paranormal investigator, and it's not like TV. And I'm going to tell people right now, if you give me the opportunity to, that this when you're on the paranormal investigations and you're doing the things that we get involved in, is quite the dangerous field. It is an extremely dangerous field, and the more knowledge you can gain in it, the better of an investigator you are. And don't be one of these people that are on the internet all the time, that are sitting in an armchair, that think that they've watched a TV show and they get it all. Get out and do it. learn how to do it the correct way and be a boots on the ground investigator, and you're going to see the things that will either make you or break you.
Yeah, and that's very, I mean, that's very telling too of the character of the people. Because like you said, it's so easy to kind of be a, what they call it, like a armchair quarterback or whatever. And just sometimes you really have to get out in it. You kind of have to get your hands dirty with it, and that's not some sort of macho euphemism. It's just how it is. You know, sometimes you have to be out in it to know what you're talking about.
Right, exactly. And what makes everything better in a case is evidence. You want to have the right evidence. You want to have the right stuff, because more and more we want to go towards the way of being admissible in a court of law. You know, if you look at everything, it's just like a trial. You know, the more evidence and the more backing you can have, it supports it more and more and more. So we want to become more scientific. We want to become better at that, because the more evidence and the more things that you can put together, it strengthens the story, and it also helps others understand that this is actually going on.
Right. And, you know, it's just like anything. You have to have a community, and you have to have, you know, back and forth. You have to have feedback. Because like you said, something in a vacuum is, you know, you're not going to get all the data, and you're not going, and it's going to be like one ant trying to carry a grapefruit. And, you know, it's just, you know what I'm saying? It's just like linking X amount of computers together. You know, the more that you have back and forth, first of all, the clearer the picture you're going to get, the more factual it's going to be. You're going to get all the different sides of it, and you know, because like I said, there may be one person that has the you know, ties all these different pieces together, and if you don't touch base with that person, and I mean, obviously you have to vet people's findings and kind of look at where they're coming from, because if you're not careful, you know, which is almost impossible, to not have a certain element of your upbringing into it, or have a certain element of your personal experiences. But once you have more than just one group of people, you know, I think it really adds to it. You know, because I've spoken to a lot of people like yourself that have a religious, you know, element, and you know, but they still speak with mediums. They still speak with people that are gifted, and it agrees in a different element.
Yeah, exactly. One of the things that is important to know, well, at least this is from my viewpoint. You know, one of the things that I always tell people is that you have to have an open mind, but not so open that your brain falls out.
Exactly.
Yeah. So one of the things that we always try to do, and getting into my philosophy and everything else, is kind of like touched about religion. To me, it's like right now there are people talk about past lives and everything else, and I am almost positive that that's true, and your soul goes on different journeys all the time. But the way that I look at it at the end is the day that when it comes to that end, and Christ comes down and puts his foot on here on this earth, all that ceases. It's done, because there's only two options. Everybody's judged, and you either get to go to one place or the other, and your soul lives in an eternity with that as a suffering point, or else you're living in the glory. So, interesting concept. That's what I believe. I think the evidence kind of proves it that way.
Well, you know, there was something I was actually looking back on it, because, like, as I've mentioned before, coming into all this, I'm a huge fan of, you know, well, good Lord. Even before I was doing researching, obviously coming up, watching the shows I watch, listening to the stuff I watch, listening to the radio shows I listen to, I'm an enthusiast about it above everything. If this little radio stint ends tomorrow, I'm still going to be listening to stuff. And I was going to ask your opinion on, I was listening to an old Art Bell episode, and it was talking about Mel's Hole. And for the listeners who's unfamiliar with it, there was a spot found out that this guy had some property on, and they found this strange hole and all kinds of weird qualities to it. You could throw stuff in there; it wouldn't make any sound. They would, you know, you could lower things into it, and like it would basically would totally take all the sound out. It was almost like a death room, like one of those rooms that are so well padded you can't hear anything, can't even hear yourself talk. And what's your take on that? Would that be something more extraterrestrial? Would that be something more? Do you actually think it would be a portal to hell? Or do you think that's just a bunch of malarkey?
And that's very interesting. And it's all the places that I've been, all the places that I've seen. I will tell you that there are places on this earth that have magnetic ley lines that have very odd activity. Galilee, one of the places that you mentioned that I'm at is the Hall Museum. On that property and in that house, there are some things that most people wouldn't even believe would happen. It happens all the time. And it's because of that. So here in Kentucky, down here in the southern part of it, around Mammoth Cave and everything else, that's where the 37th parallel is. For some reason, the 37th parallel has all kinds of activity throughout that parallel across the United States and across the world. There are these elements that happen. You can. I truly believe in portals, wormholes, and I believe that some of these things use them, and they do open up in certain areas. And it's very much that way. So you're going to find in this earth, those blue holes. There are odd areas, that are out there everywhere, and they're all mysteries because we don't have the answers to it all. But they work on something that is in a different parallel or a different way. And when they do, Steve, I spent some time up in a place in Pennsylvania, and we called it 516. And let me tell you something, that place was off the hook. It had more weirdness and high strangeness than you could ever imagine. Portals, all kinds of things. Where a person could actually, guy was telling me the story, and true, that he was riding on his tractor, and next thing you know, he gets knocked out of his tractor, gets up, looks, and half of his tractor is sitting he can see, and the other half he cannot see. What the heck is that? Was he going into a portal? And what would happen if you fall into that portal? How do you get back out? Where do you go? What's the point of it? And all this. And there's a lot of mysteries in life, and I definitely know by seeing them myself that they're out there.
Well, and it seems too that I think there's something about the human mind when you do not have that constant stimulation around you. Say if you're, especially in agricultural areas, because there's something about the wild woods. There's something about when you're out there without the distractions, you see things. I've heard of people going out cutting lumber or pulling out lumber or whatnot, and look down a path and notice what looks like a cabin or some small homestead, and you see people kind of dressed kind of like maybe like Mennonites or whatever. They don't think anything about it. They come back to get some more wood the next day, and that place is gone. And come to find out that was somewhere that had been there, 100 or so years ago. For maybe whatever reason, they got a glimpse through some sort of little portal into time. I don't know if it was a time slip or maybe this guy, for whatever reason, had some sort of empathic connection due to the fact he was gathering wood from maybe that was probably growing there back when that homestead was there. I don't know. There's so many mysteries that, like you said, either can't or we just don't have the answers to. I think it's what keeps people coming back to it, and I think it's what keeps people having an interest in it. Because, don't get me wrong, I love to learn things, but the day, which I know I never will know it all, but if that day come, that would be a really sad day.
Yes, yeah, you're right, 100%. One of the things that I've had these experiences, and luckily I get to have them with someone else, so it's a double experience, and it doesn't seem like I'm crazy.
Right.
Someone else sees it and they can relate the same story to you. And we have seen buildings appear and disappear, but it's kind of also like the same thing in the paranormal when we talk about the differences between a residual haunt and an intelligent haunt. A residual haunt is something that energy is released. Could be because of limestone, could be because of running water that's underneath the place. It holds everything. So basically what we're saying is if I walked this path and I lived in this area in my home all the time, and I did the same thing over and over again, is a recorder running that records it, and then at certain points in time, it releases it. So, um, since I work at Octagon Hall all the time, I'm expecting at one point somebody is going to say, geez, I'm watching this guy walk down the street. I didn't interact with him. I don't do anything with him, and I just disappear. That is what we consider to be the residual haunt. And then you have the intelligent haunt, where they actually interact with you and they understand what you are and everything else. Big difference.
Sure. And considering that for the folks that aren't in this area or in central Kentucky, well, I mean, in a lot of Kentucky in general, there is so much limestone, and I know this part of Kentucky has the fingers of Mammoth Cave coming through here, because we do have a karst system and lots of water and lots of natural limestone, and so there's a lot of that same sort of feeling here. And I don't know, I mean, did you find kind of coming up in this area, which I'm not sure if you have children or not, but it seems like you just come up differently, and it's sort of a thing where, you know, you hear the old stories,
right?
And
exactly.
Well, and that becomes part of who you are, and that becomes part of your story, because there's such an oral tradition here, and it does tie in with superstition and the supernatural. You know, is that something that you'd found?
Well, you know, the thing of Kentucky is, you go back to the history of Kentucky, all of that are going on here. Kentucky is probably one of the odd places that you could ever be in. It goes back to even the Indians and the natives of this area would hunt this area because it was great hunting grounds and everything else, but they had such a great respect for it. There were so much supernatural things that were happening in here. They kind of stayed away from it. They would hunt it. They would live on the outskirts of it and the edges of it, and they would come and they would camp through it and everything else. But it had a very mysterious past. And, you know, just look at all the things that have been found here in Kentucky. There's been giants found here. There's been runes found. The Welsh, many years ago, when man first came here, and they came into the missions, came in here to see the Indians, they found some Indians were speaking Welsh. What the heck, you know? We're told that Christopher Columbus discovered this area. You know, there is a lot of different stories and a lot of different things. And Kentucky has always been, and it always amazes me exactly how supernatural and how odd it is. And it is one of the most active places that I know of in the country.
Well, there's a thing too that obviously, you know, about the like the Stanford UFO and the Kelly thing close to Hopkinsville, Kentucky, and you know, UFO,
right.
yeah, UFO stuff, and which, I mean, I've heard people talk about, you know, like little white furred creatures, you know, things that almost touched on like sprites or fairies and stuff, because like you said, there are such deep dark woods here, and you know, even like the people that who go out for whatever reason and actually have homesteads there. I have a friend of mine who's on my team, Lucas, whose mother lives out like back like on the road, as we'd say here. You have to pipe in sunlight. I mean, it's way back there.
Yeah.
And we'll constantly have movement in the woods, knocks, hoops, you know, that kind of stuff, which would make which would make you think of something like a Bigfoot or something. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Kirk Stokes, but he does a lot of stuff. He comes in from Danville to the LBL area and does a lot of stuff on dogmen.
Dogman.
So,
yeah, exactly. You know, and there's been reports of dogman over by the land between the lakes for years. There's been, I had a report not too long ago in Allen County. We've got the odd things going on right now in the county next to that over by Tompkinsville. I can't think of the county's name right now, where they're having these mysterious animal deaths, and the DNR and the police are going back and forth on what it is. Some say it's an animal. DNR said no, it's not. It's not an animal attack. So it's always been here, and it's always going to be here.
No, well, this particular thing that you're talking about right now, this is new to me. Is this like cattle mutilations, or what is it?
It started out with I can't remember the name of the darn county, and I apologize for that, but it is over by the Tompkinsville area, just on the other side of Allen County. I can't remember what it is, but it's been in the news for a while. It's been all over Facebook.
You're talking about Allensville. Yeah, that's in around Bath County, I think.
No, it's not Bath County, but I want to say Monroe, but I don't think that's right, and I apologize.
That's fine.
Unfortunately, the older I get, sometimes my mind doesn't work, and I got to wake my file guy up, and he's not awake quite yet this morning.
Oh, my Lord.
But the odd thing about it is that the next thing you know, you have horse deaths. There was miniature horses. They weigh about 1,000 pounds. Three of them are attacked and killed. One dog is killed and another one is injured severely. And the odd thing about it is that as we did some investigation, some things that we've found out about it is that the a horse and a dog were actually found in this guy's pond. Now, an animal like a cougar, some people say, okay, we have a large cat running around, and we have seen them on trap cam. I've actually captured one on trap cam before. And so that's a great possibility. They roam a very large area, so yes, they can attack and do those kind of things. The other side of it is that, well, normally they don't get in the water. They're not going to drag their kill out there. You're not going to have a mass kill like that. They just don't go off and kill 4 or 5 things at one time and just leave them. And then how do you get 1,000-pound or 800 to 1,000-pound horse in water and a dead dog in water? You got to pick them up and throw them there or carry them there. And so what can pick up a 800-pound horse and put it in the water? Was
it Monroe County?
Yes, I think that's what it is.
Okay, it just popped in my. I was like, well, maybe this is it. But yeah, that's man, that's strange because, like you said,
going on, they keep on finding different kills and everything else. They just put one on here where a guy found cattle, and I was looking at the picture I came across Facebook yesterday, and it's been healed a little bit by the time he got out to the cattle, but it was definitely attacked. When you see the holes and the bite marks on it, it says, wow, that's not something that you would really see quite regularly.
Right.
Yeah, it's on Facebook. It's very easy to find. I haven't posted it on my Facebook yet. I need to, but I've just been too busy and haven't had a chance to yet. But I definitely will.
I would be curious to see if there's any correlation between these incidents and UFO sightings or some sort of strange light sightings in the woods. I almost bet you that there had been something relatively shortly before or shortly thereafter.
Yeah, we always are looking at that. That's the other thing about being involved in all aspects of it, because as we mentioned, it runs together. So if you are finding that, okay, it just happened to be a UFO in there. There was also were there Bigfoot sightings in that area? Were there other strange creature things seen in that area? You have to put it all together because, like you said, it's part of a puzzle. And you have to have all that information together to be able to get the whole picture. And that's the thing. You can't get into it too close where you're not seeing the whole picture. So you have to look at everything from the back. You put it all together, stand back, like you're at the top of the stadium, and then looking down at the whole picture. And then you can go in and put it together. And that's what a good investigator does.
Right. And, I actually had a friend, Jim Perry, that came in and visited from Portland. And and you know, obviously lots of deep woods there, and had the guy come down as part of I guess a series he was doing. He investigated me, and then he went down to New Orleans and whatnot. But showing him around the area, and he's like man, these are some really old woods. You know, I would have expected this to be further out west or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's just like, well, you go to like parts of Ohio, you go to parts of New Jersey, you know, blindfold somebody and step them out in the woods, and you're like, okay, I'm in Kentucky, I'm East Tennessee. I'm like, no, this is, you know, somewhere else, you know. And that's the thing. I mean, there's these little pockets that, like you said, sometimes it's due to the geography of it. You know, it's harder to get into and manage, or maybe the soil's not particularly great for agriculture. But a lot of times people leave those spots alone, and you know, if you press people, a lot of times there's that element of, well, it's just sort of kind of hard to get to. It's kind of a creepy spot, and nobody wants to live there. And so there is that element of high strangeness that ties into those places. And it seems like the more they're left alone, the more that grows, and the more the mythos of it grows, you know. And people kind of go, oh, that's whatever, you know, Hell's Half Acre, or that's, you know, whatever. We stay away from that spot, you know. It's almost like something you'd see out of an old Hammer film, but it's true.
Right. Yeah, you know, the odd thing about it is that, you know, most of society is living close together, and it's all in these areas. And you building, we destroy the land and everything else. But when you get into Appalachia, you're in West Virginia, you're in Kentucky, and you're in these areas, and you look, and as far as you can see, there is nothingness. There's just hills and mountains and everything else. And then I've had the pleasure of trying to walk up and down some of these things, and you look at it and say, well, man, I ought to be able to get there in like 5 minutes. You start trucking up one of those hills and coming down one of those hills and everything else. If you've ever had the misfortune of being lost in the woods, which I have, and it's amazing what you find. I was in Southern Ohio. You mentioned Southern Ohio. I was down by Wayne National Forest, down by Hocking Hills, and in that area. I used to have an old cabin down there. They had fire trails and everything else that runs through there. And we were down there one time and kind of got lost, got way back in the woods, and it was amazing. The next thing I know, I come across, I'm walking, and bam, here is a train wheel.
What?
Yeah, I'm out in the middle of the woods. There's never been a train track or anything else out there, and there is part of a train sitting in the middle of the woods. Now, how in the hell did it get there? I don't know, but it was actually there. And
that's bizarre.
Oh yeah, totally bizarre. That's how weird this thing is. I mean, it's hard to fathom that, you know, hey, sometimes you can get into these areas, and maybe you're, if you think about it, you're like going, when was the last time a person was here?
Yeah.
You know, who actually saw this? And what better area if you are to stay away from people, and you don't want to be known, and you don't want to be found, like a Bigfoot creature or something along that line of strange creature. Or what better of a place to be, because nobody's going to bump into you. Yes, and maybe you'll move out, maybe you'll come in, and maybe somebody does get there. And the more the people start coming into that area, the more sightings you start to see it.
Right. I know that back when I worked in corrections, occasionally they'd have people walk away from the farm center, which is sort of a minimum to medium security thing, and they would have people go off on, I mean, they were monitored, they had officers with them, but, you know, one officer over 20 or so men. Sometimes people try to slip off in the back 40 or whatever, and that's happened before. And so what happens is sometimes these guys would go out and would be found pretty quickly, but other times they didn't, you know, especially if these guys were, you know, Bullitt County people, you know, Eastern Kentucky folks that grew up out in the wild, knew how to make lean-tos, and
yeah, they know how to do it.
They know how to live in that, you know. So
look at the oddness about it. You know, David Pilatus, gentleman who was covered missing 411.
You've actually written several books about it.
Yes, you know, and true thing. We don't hear it very much on the news and everything else, but people are walking into it. You could be, you and I could go walking out there, and you could walk a little bit ahead of me, and you could turn around and say, geez, what happened to Bear? Bear's gone. You know, and now that is another strange thing. That's what happens in these areas. What causes it? Did I walk through a portal? Did I do anything else? Was I abducted by something? Did something take me? What happens? But there's accounts of it all over, and it happens more in the areas that are national forests and all those things.
Well, you know, it was funny that you mentioned David. It was just so strange you mentioned it, because I was listening to a show with him yesterday, and one of the things he had always said, not to get off into that too far, but he always said, don't be first, don't be last. You can be second, you can be next to last, man. It's what we used to call, my brothers was military people, and they always says, yeah, that point guy, man, that's a death sentence, and the guy in the back, that's the one someone's going to grab, and you're not going to notice them. So, yeah, it's a bad situational deal to be in, and that's happened in the LBI area. You know, you have people turn up missing for a while, and sometimes they're found, you know, or their bodies are found and stuff, and some people just weren't.
No, yeah, most of them are not found. And what's odd is that I was reading on one of them where actually when the people went back and started looking at it like a few weeks later, their clothes were folded up and sitting in an area. Did you ever read anything like that?
Well, you know, I've had people try to sort of poo-poo that off and go, well, all right, like say someone goes out in the winter, their car stalls. Well, they're trying to march through the woods and whatever, and they'll go, oh, well, you're marching and you're getting hot and trying to get somewhere, so you start, you know, you kind of get delusional, you start taking your clothes off, you're dropping them here and there. I'm like, yeah, but you ain't folding them.
Right.
Unless
exactly.
you got
exactly.
Unless you're OCD or something, I don't see that.
I mean, come on. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I think, again, that goes back to everybody wants to feel safe. And nobody wants, especially in this area, you know, land between the lakes, which I love and visit quite often. Nobody wants that stigma of going, hey, come on down. Your family will never see you again. You know?
Yeah, exactly. 100%. That's, you know, and land between the lakes area is a tourist area. It's a wonderful place. And, you know, there's a lot of people that make a lot of revenue and everything else, and they surely don't want people to know, hey, guess what? You walk in these woods, see it. You may come out, you may not.
Yeah, here, sign this waiver. That kind of thing, you know. Well, when I was down sort of in your neck of the woods, when I was talking to a friend of mine, Rob, who was actually telling me about the Kentucky meat story, where you know, I think you're familiar with that, where like they had found like all this meat had fallen out of the sky and they couldn't explain it.
Yeah, raining meat.
Yeah,
yes.
the meat storm or whatever. And he had shown me all kinds of different little odd spots, and they had similar kind of situations too. I think it's more common than people really want to talk about, just because you said again, you want to feel safe and you want to not think about that kind of stuff. Most people don't want to dwell on that just because it's a bummer. Nobody wants to think about it, you know. But
right. You're 100% right. People make their own reality, and they have to deal with what they can deal with. So they'll push things off. You may be able to see it, and you're going to say, or you'll hear it. It's just like the old thing. Oh, the house is settling. This is happening. You know, it's what makes them feel comfortable. They turn us on, you know, and people manifest their own reality, their own belief. You know, that's all that it is, and it's all to make them feel comfortable. And sometimes you have to realize that there are different things, and sometimes that stirring of that uncomfortableness takes you, and it's an experience, and you can grow from it. You know, and you can find out more. That's where we all ought to be trying to do. Keep the knowledge and know that it's there, and then venture out more to be able to find it and see what else is new out in the world.
Right, and not everything in the dark is of the dark, you know. And
yes, exactly.
You know, and you have to if you come at it from a religious slant, which I mean, I have a lot of friends who are investigators that are, they kind of go in with the full armor of God or whatever their particular deity is, and just off jump, try not to communicate with anything dark, try not to use anything that's connected or go to necessarily places that are connected with something, homicides, suicides, places like that. That you kind of try to avoid the darker elements, and usually come out with something positive. And that's what I've told people before. I said, look, if you're having something going on in your home, depending on your belief system, maybe you just say, look, what do you want? Why are you trying to communicate with me? Maybe they're trying to warn you of something. Maybe they're trying to get some validation. Maybe they don't know they're dead, if this is a human spirit. And again, I've never tried to sell people on a ghost is this or a shadow person is this. I don't know, so I can't make that assumption. But before you just think about it like this: if you're trying to talk to somebody because you feel you need to get some information to them, and they're pushing you off and they're ignoring you, after a while you're going to get a little peed off about it, or you're definitely going to up your game and trying to get their attention. And
right on.
Why not treat the person, if it is a person, like this and that? And of course, again, you can use various tests and things like that to see if it's a thing of God or if it's not of God.
Right. One of the things that is that's a great thing that you bring up, because what happens is that so many people say, okay, I don't want to deal with the dark. I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to deal with this. And then they get the people who say, oh, everything's a demon. Well, everything's not a demon. If you ever come across a demonic thing, you'll understand they're few and far between. They are out there. They're probably the most dangerous thing you'd ever want to get involved with, and most people would deal with them would never ever go back into the investigation ever again. But the odd thing about it is that the knowledge that you have to have on both. If you're going to help people, if you're going to be there, you have to be able to understand that good and evil exist. They're all together. Sometimes you go into a house, there's a dead guy. He may have been excuse my language, I hope that he could be an asshole. If he lived an asshole, well, guess what? When in death, he's going to be an asshole. There is no difference in it. I mean, and people will go, geez, that's a demonic spirit. No, it's not. It's a human spirit that is just a pain in the butt, and they're lost and they're nasty, but it's so important to be able to look at all aspects of it. You can't just only take the ice cream and not take the worst thing in the world. You have to put them all together so that you can put the pieces together to be able to see it, because that's where you'll gain your knowledge. That's where you become a better investigator.
Sure. And if I ever have the choice, I always go for the ice cream. Let me ask you something.
Yeah, we all like that. So.
Well, in the last couple minutes that we've got, I want to make sure that you mention any websites, anything like that, any events coming up, and how people can get a hold of you.
Okay, great. Got a lot of things going on. Octagon Hall is just a wonderful place, and I'm very involved in Octagon Hall. We volunteer down there all the time. It is a museum. It's one of the most fun places in Kentucky and in the South. This month of October, we are doing novice ghost hunts. It is $50 a person. All the proceeds go to Octagon Hall to refurbish it and to keep it going. And any building that's 160 some years old, it takes a lot to run and to keep the property up and so forth. We'll be doing those novice hunts Friday and Saturday throughout the month of October. And we're also got one on Halloween night if anyone is interested. You can find that by going to the Octagon Hall website, which is www.octagonhallmuseum.com, and we have the ghost novice hunts are underneath the event page. Also, if you're a paranormal investigator and you'd like to investigate the home, we also have an area there where you can go in and book your hunts right there, and we're open during the all year round, all 365 Fridays, and you can take a hunt any of those times. Fridays and Saturdays seem to be the time when most people are. So, but if you can do it on the week, you're also we're available to be able to do it then also. Night Stalkers Paranormal. Follow them on Facebook. Into the Far Radio Show is also on Facebook. I'm on Facebook underneath Barry Gaunt, and you're more than welcome to friend me and talk to me there. So there's a lot of ways to get a hold of me. Night Stalkers is doing quite a lot right now. We're quite busy. We're also we'll be going out tonight. After I get off the station here, I'm going up to the Benton Farm area. We're going to do an event up there tonight, and I'm really looking forward to that. So we're always doing everything that we can do. If it's got paranormal, if you have a sighting of something strange or bizarre, or if you need help, go to Night Stalkers Paranormal or my page. You're more than free to message me, and we will get right back to you, and I'll be glad to help you in any way that I can.
Well, and I want to go on record as saying, and this is not just because you're here, you are probably one of the most approachable guys, especially in this area in the paranormal, and you never kind of put people off generally, and you don't ever seem like you what's the word? You don't kind of talk down to them. Obviously, you've been in this a long, long time, and you've always kept a very civil way about you and a very approachable way about you, which I think makes it a lot easier for people to share very weird and unusual things, because it's hard for people to open up and to share certain things, especially if you feel you're going to be, judged for whatever. But Barry, I do want to thank you for being on. Again, you are a wonderful person, and I do want to get you back on. I really want to touch base and talk more specifically about Octagon Hall and the Benton Farm and some of the other real curious locations in your part in the neck of the woods. But
I'd love to do it anytime you would like. We'd be more than happy to do that with you. And thank you for the awesome comment. I'm very honored. Okay. And it's been a pleasure, and I hope everybody enjoyed the show. And thank you again. And I look forward to talking to you again, and I look forward to having you on our radio show again.
Well, the same. Thank you, sir. And yeah, I'd definitely be glad to be on it. But I do want to tell everybody thank you for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed this show. And go out and visit all these local parks. Don't be scared. Maybe take a couple buddies. But go out there and have fun, enjoy the day. But as the day begins to draw short and the shadows grow long, check under your beds, check under your closet. You never know. You never know what's in there. There might be something mystical. It might be something magical. But don't forget to love one another and love yourselves. But don't be afraid to let yourself get a little frightened. So until next time, stay scared, everybody. Take care.